North Dakota state lawmakers are likely going back to Bismarck for a special legislative session. Thursday, the North Dakota Supreme Court invalidated Senate Bill 2015, a major budget bill for the state government. The move will likely require lawmakers to return for a special legislative session. The court said the bill was unconstitutionally enacted and is void because the state constitution says bills can't address more than one subject. The legislature has 30 days to respond to the court's decision. Governor Doug Burgum says this decision has far-reaching consequences that will require a special session of the Legislative Assembly to enact the nearly 70 sections of the OMB bill that have now been voided. He says he's meeting with legislative leaders today to determine the best course of action for the legislature. Now, the legislature could reconvene using the 5 days remaining from its 80-day constitutional limit to meet every 2 years to pass new laws. Burgum could also call a special session.